Good evening, everyone. This is the May 6th council meeting of the City of Bel Air Beach. We're called to order, and we're now going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. We're doing something a little different this month. We have a student that is going to be doing it. He's the first person, so I'm going to come down and get him. His name is Declan Thies. And Declan, I'm going to see you in the front, okay? Everybody, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to introduce Declan to you. Declan Thies happens to be a neighbor of mine. We started this month with having students do the Pledge of Allegiance for our council sessions. Just a little bit about Declan. Declan goes to the Skycrest Christian School in Clearwater, where he's a straight A student. And that would be enough, but that's not enough for my friend Declan over here. He's Old County saxophone. He's USF, first chair saxophone. He just started in Beauty and the Beast in a play. He loves the arts and drama. And in the whole spirit of helping the community, two things that really stand out for Declan here. This summer, he's going to be he plays piano too, because saxophone isn't enough. So he does saxophone and piano. He's going to be doing that at senior citizens' homes to entertain the individuals there during the summertime. During the hurricane, when we had a lot of destruction in the neighborhood, Declan went from house to house and helped everybody with their cleanup and stuff. He did this all on his own. No one asked him to do it. So he's a terrific young man. We're real proud of him. We have a certificate of recognition for you. So thank you for leading us tonight. Dorothy Van Rohr is not here right now, is that correct? Okay, I'm not going to move that. Okay, the first thing, Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
Councilmember Robin Aki.
Present.
Councilmember Marv Bean.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis.
Present.
Councilmember Jody Shirley.
Here.
Councilmember Rita Swope.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Present.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
Finance Officer Melanie Cruzona. City Attorney Paul Marino.
Here.
First item of business is the approval of the agenda. And we had one change that I believe everybody on council got notification of earlier. Ms. June Van Scoy wanted to be added for consideration to the planning board consideration for the open position. And then also be considered for the permanent position on the Parks and Recreation Board if she's not successful in getting on the planning board. So we had that to be as a change. And then if Ms. Van Rohr was here, I was going to ask that we move number 11 to at this point because she is 100. But I'm just going to ask that we hold that one in reserve with the council's permission. If need be, I'll move it because I told her that I would get her out of here as quickly as possible, obviously. So when I see her, we'll stop the meeting and do the report. Did anyone have any changes or questions or comments on the agenda? Mr. Gunn?
Yes, under the consent agenda, I have some questions and additions on item 9. I'd like to pull number 9 out of the consent agenda and move that to the regular agenda.
Anyone have any objection? Any other? I have a few. Same issues, number 5, number 6, number 7, and then number 11 we've already discussed. So I'd like to move that to the regular. Mostly it's just questions or changes in some of the paperwork that we have to do. So I'd like to move that to the regular agenda so we can discuss. Any objections? There being none, that will be moved. So the next topic then is going to be the citizen comments. And I see some new faces in the audience. The way we do this, it's 3 minutes. Please come forward at the podium if you wish to speak. Identify yourself, where you live, your name, and speak on any item that is not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, then we're going to hold that, because I will get back to you at a later point. And I see we already have one person, so proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's not on, just push the button there. Right on the bottom.
I've got a green light.
That's it, it's good now.
Okay. My name is Stan Sofer, 117 Fifth Street. Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, Paul. Our community of Villa Beach has had an election. The people have spoken by electing a new mayor, several council member changes. We want code enforcement improvements, and that's what I'm talking about. What specific directions are you giving the sheriff's office and code enforcement regarding parking on the grass violations? I see sheriff patrols at least once a day, but never stopping. At least a courtesy or reminder ticket for new residents would be helpful. Why I'm mentioning this, 3 years ago, my wife and I were accosted by a sheriff's deputy on a Saturday for parking in my backyard in the grass. I was told by direction of the city, if I did not move my car, I would get a $160 ticket every time they found it parked there. So it cost me thousands of dollars to install a driveway just to satisfy the city. The reason was a house on 6th Street was under surveillance. They were using that ordinance to enforce the control. Well, it worked. There were arrests and renters left. However, the new tenants, along with many in the area, continue to park vehicles on the grass, but I'm still stuck with the thousands of dollars of expense. My attorney says selective enforcement is illegal. Throughout the city, we continue to find similar instances of on-grass parking. So maybe my attorney is correct and the city will be made to reimburse me. With the legal track record of the past, it sure sounds possible. One suggestion on code enforcement that one day in the month, they switch a weekday for a weekend day just to see what codes are being violated. Weekends are the worst. And since the deputies are not asked to give memos of potential citations or violation notices to the code enforcement officer, this would at least be a review and wake-up call. What say you?
Council,
Thank you.
do you wish to address this now or at a later point? City Manager?
Well, that is in our ordinance, and Laura has started working one day on a weekend. Her in April, she found a couple of code violations on the weekend, so we are starting to move that forward. What I'll need to probably do is have a discussion with the deputies, because Laura does give them a notice on their car when they do that. Hopefully they stop. But evidently it sounds like Stan, they're not stopping.
I've been working with this for 3 years. This is the first time I've come before council to mention it. I figure with the change, it's time.
Okay.
Mr. Sofer, did you call the sheriff's deputies down that weekend that you saw this happen?
No, why would I do that when we had code enforcement?
Because the sheriff's deputies can't enforce code. So if you call them and advise them that you have a code violation, then they will be accountable on that.
One weekend, there were 11 that I found. I'm not going to go through that. All I'm saying is, if the people know that they're not supposed to, a simple courtesy would be helpful.
All right. You have the sheriff coming up after you. We're going to discuss this item, and we'll continue with this. Code enforcement is something that is very important, and we're going to continue to enforce it. And also, although we do rely, I've had people tell me sometimes about issues. It's nice to tell the mayor, but tell Mr. Reeves, tell the city council, as you just did, and I appreciate it, and we will be on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got one question for the city manager. Besides just the weekends, after hours too, after normal work hours, people coming home, different things are happening.
Yeah, Laura and I have talked about doing that an evening a month too, just take spot. So you don't want to do it, as an example, you don't want to always do it on Sundays. You want to do it maybe a Tuesday night or a Monday night if you do that. And you don't always want to do Sunday on the weekend because, then they know, oh, somebody might be around the second weekend of the month. But actually, one of the ones she caught was on Jody Street. The house was that we've had issues with trying to get fixed was working on Sunday. So, we are aware of it, and I know Laura has been giving citations to people she's seen parking on the grass. Now, it would be up to the deputy because it is part of our parking ordinance that says you cannot park on landscape. And what landscape means is shell, mulch, grass, it's got to be a hard surface or you can't park there.
Are there any other citizen comments? Seeing none, that will be, oh, I'm sorry, there was one.
My name's Stan Beluska. I live at 110 23rd Street, Bella Beach. And my question is, we have a neighbor at 111 23rd Street. They were renting the unit. The renters have since been evicted, and they've left domestic pets at large. And we called code enforcement, and we're basically getting there is a code that says that they're supposed to be taken care of, but we don't know what to do about it. We're being told it can't be enforced because the code is so outdated.
I'm going to look right to the city manager on this because I know we just
Okay.
updated the code a year ago, so.
Well, there's a section in there that says the police department will pick up stray animals, but animal service, that is going to be something we're going to have to change, but animal services in the county no longer does that. And I think, I spoke to your wife, I think. Okay, I'm well aware of this house because even before when we were no code enforcement, I had to go there and tell them to cut their grass. So I'm well aware of this. We sent a code violation to the homeowner who, I'm trying to remember where they're at, New York maybe or something? New Jersey. And I believe they're there right now cleaning out the house because the people they evicted, was it last week or the week before?
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
since
so whoever, they got evicted, the sheriff went over and gave them the eviction notice, and now the landlord's down here cleaning it up because they got a code violation
Well,
notice.
that brings up another issue because they think they can take all the furniture and every item that's in that house and put it to the curb.
Which they can't, and they were told that today.
All right.
They can't do that. They need to get a special pickup from Waste Management if they want to do that. But evidently there is something, and maybe the sheriff can answer that, there's something in the law, they have 24 hours if they're evicted to pick that stuff up. I guess they're supposed to be notified or something, and maybe the sergeant or corporal can answer to that once he has an eviction.
It sounds like all that's going to get straightened out this week, hopefully. However, I don't think anybody's aware that these cats are still going to remain there. And
Right, and animal services won't touch them.
right, and Laura said to me today, she said they would have to be captured before even somebody
Right.
else would come out to pick them up. And I'm like, well, who's going to do that?
Yeah, that is a problem, because I guess years ago, animal services used to come out and pick up stray dogs and stray cats. And now they won't pick up anything.
Do we know for certain, and I'm sure you do, but I need to hear it from you, do we know for certain that those people abandoned those animals?
I didn't see them bring them with them, but he was taking care of them.
I mean, if we can prove that they abandoned them, then you have a cruelty ordinance, you can't just abandon animals and let them die. So that would be a whole different thing to pursue with the sheriff if we knew where these people were, but we would have to know for a fact that it was their animal, not if they were leaving a
Cat, you
Being a
don't know
milk
the
cow.
register or anything like that, that even if you could say that, they brought him, I don't know that he would own up to it.
This dovetails with that coyote issue that's been brought up, and the response to that issue was, well, animal services doesn't deal with that. Is it time we look into retaining some sort of animal control on the
Well,
side?
animal services considers coyotes wildlife, so I think we would have a little bit of problem trying to capture them, as far as legally, if they consider it wildlife. I don't know that for a fact, but maybe we look into that further. But there's a cost associated with,
I understand, I'm just saying, stray animals, feral animals, nuisance wildlife, I mean, it may be time that we had some kind of retainer contract for somebody who deals with those kinds of issues.
yeah, I can check into that.
Look into that. I like that idea. I mean, because we're here, something like this, those animals are running around and they can get very violent down the road, and I don't want to have some child or adult scratch or rabies, the whole routine. So we don't need to go through it if we can somehow fend that off. I mean, it's not going to be that much to catch them, right? I just really would love to know who these people are that abandon animals, because that's a whole different situation.
They were tenants in a rental unit, so. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It sounds as if we'll be on this within the week, but I'm going to keep this as an open item, and if it's not by next council, let somebody know or let me know directly.
I've got their contact.
Okay, excellent.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizen comments? I see no other comments, so that part will be closed. We now go to the people that everybody wants to talk with, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department.
That's a sheriff's office. It's the Department of North here.
Oh, okay. I'm still from the north.
Constitutional office.
Hello. Don't have much to report. As far as just activity in the city, the majority of the activity for the deputies were traffic stops and basically house checks for the folks that are out of town. There's one crash in the city, and that was at 24th Street and Gulf Boulevard here in Minor. As far as any crimes go, there was basically what I saw was one burglary that was reported. In reading the report, it doesn't appear that it was a burglary. It possibly was. Somebody saw some pry marks, but they're not sure if they were already on their house prior to. So it was written up as a burglary. But I don't believe there was nothing missing. There was no forced entry, nothing like that. So that's the only other thing I saw on the sheet here. Other than that, that's all I know.
Questions from council? I had a question for you. My thanks first to the sheriff and the entire department or office, whatever you prefer, for the speed boxes. I understand that we have the data on that, and I just want you to extend our appreciation for that. I believe, City Manager, you have that data, and we have everything that we need at this point?
We haven't got the final report. It was sent up for someone above Captain Liner to get approval to send it to us. So it's in the works.
It's coming. But again, I know that those are not the easiest things to do, and you've got it to us very, very quickly, and it's appreciated. We don't want to have any quality of life issues here with speeding and other problems, and I know it had been a concern of several citizens and people on the council. I did have something. This is coming up on next month, but to the burglary point, I saw that there were 2 burglaries that happened on April 18th, and I don't know if you know anything about those, but there were 2, it seems like, in one house, and I'm just wondering, do we have a burglary situation going on in the town, or is it just stray things?
I can look at that and get back to you on it, but I'm going to say no.
Okay.
There's nothing other than those 2 that you're mentioning that I'm aware of at all. So I'll look into those. I can get back to you and let you know, but I'm not aware of them.
And one more thanks, I know it's been a pet peeve of mine and some people that a lot of people that I've heard from in the city regarding beach easements. I've seen the officers patrolling those. I'll be out there almost every night swimming in the future, so I'll be watching myself to see what's going on, but I know that you've been stepping up patrols there, and that's appreciated. Thank you. I'm sorry, any comments from the citizens? Questions? Thank you, Deputy. Third item is the monthly financial report. Our financial officer, Melanie Cruzona.
Good evening. Let's see how quickly we can make it go today. All right, so this is the March 31st financial report, which is 6 months into the fiscal year, and that puts us at 50% of our budgeted expenditures and revenues. And we're pretty close on target. We're at 60% with the general fund as far as the revenues collected, and 51% for the expenditures. And pretty much everything is, if it's over, it's under, it's a timing issue. Ad valorem, 90%, that's, it's a timing issue. We get the bulk of that in up front, and we'll get some stragglers in as they sell out the tax certificates. These local option gas tax and the franchise fees, utility taxes, those all run 1 to 2 months behind. And again, the licenses and permits, that's the rental registrations. Grants are the FEMA registration, FEMA reimbursements, and those are all paid in advance. Those are billed in September, we collect them in October, and the grants are from last year. So those are just more than what we anticipated, so that's a good thing. Everything else is pretty close on target, except for miscellaneous, and that happens every year. We get a reimbursement from the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, and it's a reimbursement of premium because we're good and we don't wreck our cars and things like that, so they give us a discount after they do an audit. And then the only two things at the bottom that are at zero are the contributions from the marina. Again, that's a transfer I do at the end of the year, and the appropriation from fund balance, which is a budget balancing entry, and that gets used as needed at the end of the year. And the expenditures are right on target, 51.44. That's pretty good. And again, this is just a lot of times this is just a tiny timing thing. Legislative is lower because we have not had as many council members traveling and going to conferences. But other than that, your department is right on target with the exception of your travel budget. Everybody else is right on target. And yeah, any questions on the general fund?
Melanie, I'm sorry, I have one question. Actually, it's just an observation. If you go back to non-departmental,
Okay.
we always have this, there's always an issue with this line. It's got to be in the spreadsheet probably. That legal portion of non-departmental. Okay, the number I see we've changed, because last time I think it was like 6,000, now we've got up to 14. But that percentage of budget is not correct. That should be 47%. So I think there's a formula error there.
Oh, it probably pulled in from the total, so I apologize. We'll get that fixed too. But the 14,000 is the updated amount for the fiscal year to date. So
And that is our correct number.
that is the correct
Excellent.
one.
Thank you.
Marina Fund, revenues are just a little bit over. Again, we had some larger boats in there. That may even out as we had a couple of vacancies. I know Patty got one of the slips turned over pretty quickly, but we still have 2 or 3 slips open.
They're all filled.
They're all filled now. Okay, all right. So April, you may see it a little bit lower, but then it should pick back up again and be fine as far as where that's going. And then the expenses, again, same thing. We haven't done capital. We're carrying that over for a bigger project. Capital Projects Fund, this is over for the most part again, where you're looking at grants. That is the Gulf Boulevard Beautification Grant, and that is almost expended in full for this section. It'll be another 10-year program, or however they want to call it, where we'll get another 10 years of allotment to work on that. Do you know what that is yet, Lynn?
It'll pretty much be the same allotment
You
as
think
we.
it'll be about the same? Okay, because I haven't seen the numbers on that yet, but we've received, we're in our last year. It's a reimbursement, so we don't get paid until we get it back. But Everything's a carryover, so there's still, when we look at the capital projects worksheet that I do at the end, you'll see there's like $283,000 left to expend for this particular project. Interest is high, again, that's from investing the loan until we need to use that. So again, come the end of the year, after we've spent most of that for the undergrounding, that's gonna go down as well. And then as far as the expenditures, same thing. The capital improvements are high because they're items that have been carried over from prior years. So it's not over budget, it's budget that's been rolled. And debt service is right on target because it's paid quarterly. So far, 76% of our expenditures have been for capital items of the total budget. This is our investment page. This is for the general fund. And for anybody that's new here, we break it down. If it's green, it's readily available funds. If it's yellow, it's a CD, so it's not readily available, but we can spend it if needed. And anything in red is restricted. And for the general fund, that would be for our hurricane fund and anything that we have encumbered. The Marina Fund and the Capital Projects Fund are the same. Capital Projects Fund, it's pink and it's red because all of it is encumbered, but the dark red that's just to highlight that we have a completely separate bank account set up to fund the undergrounding of the utilities. So the total interest that we've made for March was $9,991. And then this is just a breakdown of all three funds together. As you can see over here, the bulk of our funds is restricted. This amount here, just under $1 million, is in CDs, and then 1.6 is readily available funds for operating and capital. And this is just an itemization of the restricted funds. This is the capital schedule. Again, this first page is pretty much just items that we're accumulating funds for projects in the future, like the roof, HVAC, carpet. The second page is where the bigger items get done: roads and streets, bridge repairs, bridge replacements. Most of that has been completed last year, and so now we are beginning to accumulate funds for these projects going forward. And then this is what we're currently working on as far as capital. Stormwater is in progress. I believe they've moved on to 5th, Glenn? Where are we on stormwater?
Third through fifth, and the permit application has actually been submitted to Swift Mud, and we've just got the plans here in the last couple of days. So we're waiting on the permit.
Seawall repairs have been completed. Gulf Boulevard beautification, this is what I was talking about before. There's $230,000 left of the first allotment that Pinellas County has given us for Gulf Boulevard beautification. And then undergrounding utilities, that's our big project that's going on right now. And as you can see, we've got $1.3 million left to spend in this fiscal year to date. And Lynn can update you as to what I know that they've started, that they're doing.
I'll talk to you about that in my comments.
Anybody have any questions about the numbers?
Anyone in the audience have any questions for our financial officer? I had a question, really, not so much a question for you, but maybe a question for council with you here. This actually came from the audience. It was a suggestion to me last time. You do a very wonderful job giving us a great presentation each month. A lot of stuff stays the same from month to month, and the idea came up of maybe having the full report like you just did on the quarter, and this happens to be a quarter, so it worked out real well. But maybe on the other months, if it's not necessary, the same reports, the same financials, you'll still prepare them for the council, but maybe the abbreviated version. I don't know how people feel about it. I'm okay with it. It saves a little bit of presentation time, and if people find it useful, we'll keep it the way it is, but I just wanted to put that idea out to council. It's not something we have to decide tonight, we can talk about it at a work session, but I did hear that from an audience member because they're sitting through the financials too, and as much as I like finance, but not everybody's a finance kind of person, so, maybe we can do a kind of abbreviated version, because a lot of stuff stays the same. Are you okay with that first?
Guys, I'm excited about finance.
I like it.
I present whenever I'm asked. I was doing it monthly, and then I was doing it quarterly. I'm doing it monthly, so whatever council decides, I'm more than happy to prepare. I can easily do just a snapshot for everybody once a month that you can just review, and if you have questions, get with me. But it's whatever is better for you all.
I like the financial statements, but maybe just the presentation can be, we'll talk about the next work session, and we'll see what everyone's thoughts are, but I just want to check with you first.
And then there's just one more page here that city manager asked me to give everybody reminders. We've got extra meetings for budget this year. June 5th will be our first budget work session. We'll be going over capital projects and the Marina Fund. June 26th at 5:30, we'll have another budget session where we'll be doing the operating, general fund operating sections. These sections are city clerk, city manager, mayor, council, finance, IT, police, and that is garbage. July 8th at 5:30, we'll have another workshop where we'll be doing operating sections 519, which is non-departmental, public works, and parks and recs. And then on the 29th at 5:30, we'll do our budget workshop, and that will be everything all together. Then our public hearings will be September 4th at 6, and then the final is September 16th at 5:05. Just reminders.
Thank you. Citizens, I see a full audience of people, and this is terrific. You're always welcome here at City Hall. Those budget meetings that our financial officer just told you about, everyone's welcome to attend those. I always ask for comments from citizens. You'll always have a chance to do your input. There's going to be full sessions where it's coming to the public, but this is where we set tax rates. This is where we set capital projects. This is where we set what's going to be spent and how the city's going to be run next year. If you've done nothing else, these are probably the most important stuff, so everybody loves finance at that point because it's the most important thing in the city. So we will be putting a lot of effort and time into that. Please come, please participate, contact any one of the representatives and make your voices heard, please. I'm going to, thank you, Melanie. I'm going to now move item 11 up front. I see we have Ms. Van Roer, and I'm going to do that presentation now. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can't, Ms. Van Roer is not going to be able to stand up, so everyone's going to kind of have to turn around when you want. When you're 100, you can do whatever you want. But when you feel like you're ready to, you can stand up. I was told that we previously had a sign outside in honor of Dorothy Van Roer's 100th birthday, and I said, well, we have to do a proclamation too, because when you turn 100, that is a special thing. So, just so you know, Dorothy and her husband moved to Bel Air Beach in 1980, and she served in the city in many capacities. She was president of the Bel Air Beach Ladies Luncheon Club, secretary and acting president of the Bel Air Beach Property Association, and the Bel Air Beach Island Garden Club. And we want to honor you on the occasion, and I know it was a little while back, but her 100th birthday, 100 years young, ladies and gentlemen. We have Dorothy Van Roer. Congratulations.
Thanks for meeting myself very nice, very nice of them. Very, very delightful surprise. But of course, Dollar Beach is always food to my heart. And I have enjoyed working with everyone, all the wonderful people who Father Meredith and done wonderful things for Dollar Beach. And I'm not out to live all over again now, but I'm always available if anybody would like to see me. And I'm always thinking very, very hard to get out to Dollar Beach. People who have been so great and they're helpful in all the capacities. And so what little I have done, I'm always appreciative. And I want to thank you so much for honoring me in this way. Thank you.
Okay, next we're on item 5, which is the approval of the March 21st and April 1st and April 15th council sessions and work session minutes. Do we have any comments, corrections from anyone? I guess we'll take them one at a time. So we'll start with the April 1st city council session. Did anybody have any changes or comments on that one? This is consent agenda, yeah. I had a change, so that's why I was going to mention something. Did anybody else have something on first? I did on April 1st. Item number 8, Madam Clerk, said Councilmember Shirley nominated Vice Mayor Glenn Dunn. I believe that was Councilmember Swope, if I'm not mistaken. And perhaps we can get that confirmed. It was you. Okay, my mistake. So that's correct. Okay, no other changes on April 1st? And the next one was the April 15th work session. Any changes or questions? I had one, page 5. It says, can a handout be distributed to residents regarding traffic calming? I'm not sure what that meant.
That was this discussion about speed bumps, and I mentioned to everyone that we'd come up with a process if we're going to go forward with that.
Okay, so that's all right.
Yeah.
I didn't have any other questions on April 15th. So unless anybody else had any questions or comments? And what Lynn Reeves had mentioned to me was we could approve or clear these items. I was just going to clear them all at once, clear up any questions we have, and then just approve the entire consent agenda, if that's okay. Number 6 is authorize the city manager to obtain a binding estimate from Duke Energy for undergrounding of utilities on Harrison Avenue. Ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, residents on Harrison Avenue began the process for undergrounding. One of the questions that we receive a lot about is what happens on undergrounding? Am I going to get it? How's it happening? This is how it happens. The first thing that happens is somebody walks a petition along to the neighbors. And the question is, do you or do you not want to have the city undertake the investigation as to how much it's going to be to have the undergrounding? That's what's happened so far. They got about 60%, as I recall, of the citizens to sign this petition. So now what we will be authorizing our city manager to do is get a binding estimate from Duke Energy. Did anyone have any questions on that? I had one question. It was on the nature of that word binding, city manager. Last time I remember, and I wasn't on council at the time, but we got an estimate and then it came back significantly higher. And I just want to make sure that binding to me means that's going to be the number or darn close. So what do we have here?
Well, that's why we're doing this process. Before, they didn't have the binding estimate. They had an engineer's estimate that we had been working with. So what's gonna happen first is, in the future, they go get the petition, then they come to us, and I come to the council and ask the council to spend, I'm guessing this one will probably be somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 to get the binding instrument from Duke. And then at the same time, I will get an estimate from Bright House. So we'll have all those costs ahead of time, and then we would have to go back to the street residents, and they would have to do the same petition process as we did in Bellevue Estates Island, where they'll have to go door to door, get petitions signed, return them. It has to be 50 plus 1%. So that'll be the process. But this way, they know up front what the worst case scenario is. Where in the previous, they had a consultant tell them it was gonna cost, I think it was $1.6 million, and it ended up coming in 2.2, which we're saving some money on that, and I'll explain that later. But this makes it more, I guess, more direct to the residents. We're not going back to the well and asking twice, which I think, is not fair to the residents. So we've got a new way of doing it, let's put it that way.
And then the final piece of that, if I understand correctly, after we get the resident approval, assuming they're good with the numbers that they see, then council has the final approval or rejection.
Right, and then there's some ordinances that have to be passed, the assessment, we gotta create an assessment roll, just like we did with Bellevue Estates Island.
So that's the answer to the question as to how this process starts and stops. So it's not something that someone's going to come to your block and just do. It's something you're going to implement if you wish to have it on your block. And then ultimately it's up to the council. Council's been supportive in the Bellevue Estates Island situation, so that's where they were at in the past. Okay, I didn't have any other questions on that. Thank you.
I do. I would like to go ahead and
Yes.
ask. What about the other residents that didn't sign? Were they contacted or were they not home?
Well, I actually walked the petition around, and yeah, there are some that I just couldn't contact. We have several residents that don't reside there full-time, so just haven't been able to connect with them. Anyone else has been in support of that I've spoken to?
Any other questions on council? I do have a question from the audience. Please come up.
Wanda Square, 517 Belle Isle on Belle Avenue. Lynn, once you get the binding estimate, doesn't that have a time definite associated with it?
It does, but in having the discussions with Duke that we had on Bellevue Estates Island, they were a little lenient about that, so I don't really think that's going to be a big problem. And realistically, if we don't do this, then we don't really get a good price. And realistically, even if it cost, I would say to the city council, even if it cost us a second or a partial additional amount of money, it would still behoove us to do it this way as opposed to the consultant.
So if the time runs out, you could go back for a second binding estimate that could be significantly higher.
Well, I don't think that's going to be the case, because after we got it corrected in Bellevue Estates Island, it went pretty fast. We were, let's see, trying to remember, I want to say it was, Mark, do you remember? It was quick, and I had my 6 months. Yeah.
Are you also aware that the legislature passed bills that allowed the utilities to collect fees from all of us ratepayers in order to do undergrounding? It
Yes.
hasn't been signed by the governor yet.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. If the whole city wanted to do that, but this is, just like Bellevue Estates Island, which is a separate assessment.
So we could still get assessed by Duke Energy.
Well, not on this project you couldn't, because they can't assess you if you're not doing the whole city.
Yeah, Wanda, just so you know, Duke Energy no longer does what we did on Bellevue Estates Island. The process of getting a non-binding contract first is out. They won't even go back and do it anymore.
While he's coming up, let me make it very clear, I don't want any misinformation leaving this room. The city is not being underground. These are individual blocks, so I don't want any misquotes or any panic setting down. We're not taking out, because I know there's several blocks that do not want undergrounding, and if that's your intent, that's the way it's going to stay. Yes, sir.
Bill Lusk, 3010 Hibiscus Drive West. I was just kind of curious on the number I heard. I don't know if it was you, city manager, or 50 plus one. So someone puts out a petition, and not really specific to underground, anything. I want new streetlights, we want a road paved. We're talking about residents, assessments, or cash out of their pocket. Is it really 50.1% that can move things forward, therefore 49% who might not know about it or agree with it end up with that assessment under their own?
Yes, you could.
Is that the number?
Yeah.
That was a lot higher.
I don't believe that's correct, because Bellevue Estates Island is based on 51% of the assessed value. It's based on value, not head count.
Not resident itself, it's the value.
It's based on the assessed values. Part of the equation is you have, not only do you have to show that there's a equal improvement for everyone, but then you have to show that whatever a person's assessed, that they're getting their money's worth of value.
Sure, so, just go back to the number of homes. What percentage of the homes in any respective area?
Well, for instance, there are 115 properties, actually 116 properties that were in the Bellevue Estates Island Underground
What
project.
percentage did you need?
Okay, so wait a second. So what happens is, of 116 properties, out of those 116 properties, there are only 115 property owners. Okay, so for instance, one person had two adjacent properties. His assessed value is actually higher than anybody else, and we had to show that the properties across the bridge that are adjacent to Bayshore had to have the same amount of improvement, and we had to prove that they had to be assessed properly. So there's this big equation that goes into, out of those 116 properties, 57 of them have overhead aerial power, and it requires more installation cost than the newer homes that have been renovated and already have underground utilities to the curb. So you had to plug into this equation those who have the lower costs for installation and those who have the higher costs. And
Is there a document anywhere on here's a process for putting forth a petition? Again, not specific to undergrounding, but just in general when it's a like situation. Is that documented?
Well, there was an ordinance, yeah. It was an ordinance that was passed by the city that tells us what we have to do in the value. And as Vice Mayor Gunn said, as an example, it was, I think the overhead people were like, extra were like 315,000, and the base was like 1.3. So they had to make sure that it had to meet that 50 plus 1% of that value. So what they do is go out, they sign the petitions. We sent out 115 petitions, and I think 85 were returned. 30 didn't respond, but they're still part of the equation.
Sure.
So
So that's an ordinance that's
set up to do assessments.
it's available online?
yes,
I
it's a
don't
city
know if it's
ordinance.
online, but
That's all I wanted.
That was an ordinance that the city had never had, and basically when we
I know.
wanted to move forward with this undergrounding, we basically came forward and enacted an ordinance, and this is how to do
It
it.
sets precedent for not just underground, that's why I was inquiring. I
Yes.
think I heard 50 plus one, and I thought, wow, that's a low number.
But it's the value.
It's explained differently, so thank you.
Well, I think also what you were trying to find out is if like how Jody went out for the petition of her neighbors, what percentage of that petition agreed in order to get the ball rolling? Is that
And/or what percentage who might not agree
right?
could end up with something they don't agree with.
Right, I mean, it could be something like
I
speed
didn't realize-
tables or,
I think I'll look into it further. I got a pretty good idea of where you're headed with that.
Bill, the other thing that comes to play is the differences in cost between the aerial, the people that had aerial, and the people that are underground. What it did is change the percentage. We had to go from 51% up to 68%,
Yeah, yeah.
or 68
You
homes.
know, it wasn't specific to the underground, and first of all, good luck.
But that ordinance is a state ordinance. You can do this. That's where it all starts.
So not specific to undergrounding though?
No,
I was just kind of
no,
curious.
any project.
Okay, cool, thanks guys.
Mr. Lusk, let me just say something also, that regards to the process, you can start the petitions. Ultimately, it's the 7 people on the council that get the final say. So if there's anything that is not being done correctly, or the citizens of a block feel that things weren't done right, again, this just gets the ball rolling, what happened here, so it almost doesn't matter if other people on the block didn't see it or whatever, this is just to get an estimate. The next one that goes through is the one that will bind, start to bind the citizens into saying, yes, we really want that. But ultimately, it's the 7 people up here on council who have to make that decision. So it's not, and it's happened unfortunately for many, many years before this, the council did not agree with the citizens despite what they were looking for. So it's not a gimme, it's something that comes to council and is decided. We don't operate with, we get a petition and everything gets passed in the city, because we couldn't run the city that way. Okay. Did we have any other comments on that? All right. Vice Mayor Gunn, it wasn't number 8, it was number 9 that you had moved, right?
That's correct.
Right, okay, so 8 is still on the consent agenda, and I know I'm kind of going out of order, probably driving you crazy, Madam Clerk, but we're going to take care of all the items that we moved at once, and then we're going to take care of all the consent agenda items at once. Number 9 is to authorize the city manager to advertise for legal services for the city attorney. I had some questions, but first I wanted to see what council had to say. There's an RFQ in the packet. RFP.
Personally, Mayor, I would like to put that into workshops, we can discuss it. I think there's more information out there that we need to discuss before we move forward.
What information we've had this at workshop now for 2 sessions.
Do some comparison to what other cities do and see what they ask for in their descriptions versus what we're asking for.
This comes from, correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, I gave you 2 RFPs from 2 separate cities. I believe you added another one. I spoke to another city today, which actually did 8 pages. We're doing 14 pages, so we have probably excess detail compared to some other cities. But basically, we're within the range in terms of what has to be in there. But
Yeah,
I think we've taken this from other cities.
Yeah, this was multiple cities that I created this with. And then I asked the mayor to look at it and kind of give me a few other items and then tonight, what I'm asking is if you've got some other tweaks to it, we can do that. We've got time, but I'm asking you to tell me one way or the other, do you want to advertise it?
Mr. Mayor, if the council is finished with its comments, I'd like to make some comments regarding this matter.
I did have just one comment. Well, do we want to, I thought we had consensus that we were going to bid this, but what I'm hearing is that we may have questions. Is there questions on council, or is there not? Do I need to take a vote on this?
I'd ask that I'd be able to comment on this issue, and maybe people in the audience that may want to comment on this issue.
Let's defer. I'll defer to you at this point, council. I'll come back to my question. How's that?
Okay. Well, as everyone knows, on March 21st, this council, by consensus, directed the city manager to develop 2 RFPs, or RFQs, as the case might be, for engineers and for city attorney. Now, in my 40 years, as an attorney for cities, counties, constitutional officers, and quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, I've never heard of any sweeping action like this being done without some clear rational basis or any alternative clear justification why these actions are being taken to create this kind of constructive termination of existing contracts. But I want to talk to you about the office of city attorney for a minute, if I might. For the benefit of the new members on this council, I think it's important that you understand historically what Bel Air Beach's city attorney office has been like. And this city has had a good working relationship over the years with its city attorney. Now, in the mid-1990s, my former law firm, Fowler White Gilmont, Anchor, PA, was asked to designate an associate or a partner to be a city attorney. At that time, they picked Brian Ellis, who held the position until his retirement. They put out an RFP after that, and my firm, then Marino and Walsh, was selected to succeed. That was in 98. And thereafter, when our firm broke up, I took over that contract that's under my PA, which is also a firm. So as you can see, I've held this position now for 20 years. Now I want to call your attention to the comments made by the city manager with regard to the city attorney. And I think they're on page 5 of the minutes, I think. Now, we have really enjoyed absolutely no litigation as a result of the acts or omissions of the city council, its staff, or anyone else for that matter. And this city only underwent one serious litigation matter back early 1990s before even Brian Ellis was on board, which cost us a lot of money, but we inherited the marina as a result of it. And that's a 25-year record of no litigation, no major claims by virtue of the actions of the city council, much of which I'd like to suggest that maybe is my taking a very proactive approach of watching everything that council does. Now, at the work session, the mayor said he would meet with me to discuss some issues about the city code, which in his opinion were unconstitutional. Well, unfortunately, that meeting never took place. But please allow me to provide you with several items to help you deliberate about the future of your city attorney and his associate, or the future city attorney professional services. First of all, if you haven't had the benefit of this before you even consider it, I would ask that you pass these out, please, Mr. City Manager.
Council, I'm going to interrupt you here.
No, if you don't mind, sir, I'd like to finish, and then when I'm finished,
I'm going to limit how much time you have to do this with, okay? Typically, it's 3 minutes on the council.
No, it's not.
Please don't interrupt me. Please don't interrupt me. This is about whether we're sending this out for bid or not. This is not your opportunity to lobby this council for another term, which you certainly have every right to bid on and come and make a presentation on.
Well, let me say.
However, I'm not going to take a half an hour while we go down memory lane here.
No, I'm going to be finished in a couple of minutes, if you will indulge me and humor me, please, Mr. Mayor. You know, so I've given you a resume. Also, at the same time, I want you all to understand who Jackie Spoto is, a member of my firm. And here's her little resume. You haven't had the benefit of this when you made your decisions. And Jackie is an outstanding government lawyer. She represented the Pinellas County School Board, and she's done a great job. I knew her when I worked at Salem, Sachs, and Nielsen. And lastly, I also want to give you the latest compensation survey that was done by a local firm here back in August with regard to attorney's fees among the various coastal cities. And I think it's important that you have that as a point of reference when you're making your final decision on which way to go. You know, I was very pleased to have been selected by the Florida Bar. Come on, let's have one. Just pass that down. to have been designated with the Ralph Marsicano Award, which is the highest award given by the Florida Bar to any government lawyer. Not only that, but also the Board of County Commissioners of Hillsborough County did a proclamation thanking me for saving them millions in liability costs while I served as general counsel to the sheriff. You know, should you decide to terminate this contract, don't be shocked if you see city attorney fees double or triple. That has been the experience in other situations where they have doubled when they're going out with a bigger firm or one that doesn't work for the kind of money that Jackie and I have been doing. But I would ask that you show me, Mr. Mayor, and I do respect the fact that you're a constitutional lawyer, and I would ask that you show me what is unconstitutional in our code. Now, I've taught constitutional law and civil liability at police academies, correction academies, HCC Community College, Northern Florida University, and the executive management course for police and sheriffs with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. In that regard, I taught Title 18, 241, 242 criminal civil rights violations, working closely with the FBI from the Tampa.
Got 2 minutes, counsel.
Thank you. And I've been lead counsel on 42 U.S.C. 1983 actions numerous times in federal court. And as in my capacity as general counsel to the Association of Public Safety Pilots in 1985, Attorney General Bob Butterworth had asked that I prepare an amicus brief to file in Florida v. Riley in a case where Justice Sandra Day O'Connor adopted my key legal arguments in that particular constitutional law case. And it's still good law today, and there's several constitutional issues dealing with reasonable expectation of privacy. Well, to answer Vice Mayor's question about open-ended contracts, and I can certainly appreciate your concern about open-ended contracts, but you know there's an advantage to an open-ended contract, where you've got a 30-day termination provision for any reason whatsoever. If you got a term contract, you're bound by that term. If you got an open-ended contract, you can just terminate it at will for any reason. You asked a question also about Jackie Burcher attending more and more city council meetings or doing more and more of the work. Well, your charter says that the city attorney or his designee shall attend all city functions and city meetings. I'm going to ask you all to seriously consider what you're doing here. I mean, it doesn't make much difference to me, but I am somewhat concerned that we've got an opportunity to bring on board one of the brightest women lawyers I've worked with in my many years as a government lawyer. And there's an attempt here to go out to the street looking for whatever you're going to be looking for in light of all of what I've presented to you here today. And I really think that before making a decision, you need to mill over all this information.
Thank you, counsel. Your time. Do we have any comments on counsel to what Counsel Marino has just said? And then I'm going to open this up to the floor after I make my comments. Vice Mayor?
I originally asked to remove this from the consent agenda because I had some questions and possible additions to the requirements within the RFQ itself. So looking at the RFQ, I'm looking at the second page, and the fourth paragraph from the top of page 2, there's a requirement for Florida local government experience is required. And my question is that what we want, required or just recommended demonstrated experience along those lines? I think there's also some implications that if that attorney has local Florida government experience, then he's familiar with ethics and sunshine and public records and all of that. But it still goes back to, is that a requirement that he's a Florida lawyer, or is it just recommended? Along those same lines, basic services later towards the bottom. Number 3, draft and approve ordinances, resolutions, and contracts. Does that also include provisions for reviewing the same things on perhaps a frequent or infrequent basis? The other thing I wanted to add was perhaps some requirement for IT experience, familiarity, and adeptness with Microsoft Office or whatever the typical resource management tools are of the day. And then towards the end also I wanted to know if we want to add in some familiarity and requirement to be involved in public affairs and any review of special magistrate decisions. That's pretty much all I had. Those are just questions I had, and whether or not we want to make changes to the RFQ.
Can we address them tonight?
I don't see why not.
I mean, are you prepared to add them as, we can add them as addendums and make the changes to that on the fly, Lynn, if you can do this? I mean, I don't wish to, we have deadlines and dates, and I want this coming up for our budget. I want it part of our budget process so that we know, as council mentioned, we may be spending more money, we may be spending less money, but we do need to know. So I don't want to delay this any longer than need be.
Basically, what I need is to clarify exactly where he's talking about, because,
I think we may be trying to squeeze too much into the time allotted tonight. Perhaps I can give him some information, and then later on what's going to come up is whether or not we're going to have a work session later this month. I mean, that may be a better forum for discussion, and then June you can have the final RFQ approval.
That pushes us out another month. We can do it as a special part of that session, a special session. 15th, 16th, or did we set a date, Madam Clerk, yet for the work session?
No,
it'd
sir.
be the 20th?
20th?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe, didn't it, Patty, Monday the 20th?
Yes, that's Monday, 20th.
Does that still give you time, City Manager?
Yes.
We made the changes that night?
Yeah, then we'll still...
In the process, I mean, as we're going along, obviously, they get the change, everyone gets the changes over to you between now and the 20th, and we meet and finalize this.
Right.
If necessary, do a special vote that night.
You'll have to have we'll have to hold a special meeting before the work session.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, you're presuming that this council is adopting the idea of terminating the contract of the city attorney? Is that what you're presuming here before they voted?
First off, there's no contract that's being terminated. It's an open contract.
Oh, yes, sir. It's called constructive termination of an existing contract with a 30-day notice provision.
Nothing's being terminated, Council, but let me read you something and understand it well, because I'm just as much experienced as you are. The city attorney shall be appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the city council. The pleasure of the city council. If this council votes to remove you, you're removed.
That's right.
No one's removing you. This is being out to bid. You have every right to bid, although I don't know after that last outburst how you'll do on the bid, but we'll see. So put your bid in. But we're not going to have you do a bid and cut off everyone else's opportunity to address this council properly. We are going to narrow this down to the top 4 or 5 people. They will come here, and then they will have questions asked of them. And I decline your invitation to tell you what's unconstitutional about your laws. You just went through that. But I'll be happy to tell you where the problems are at some point in time. Because you're gonna, if this continues, and it almost happened at the last election, this city could have found itself in a 6-figure lawsuit. And it would have made your past experience look wonderful compared to what would happen in the future. Take another look at it. Take a look at your First Amendment, and then tell me how your laws stack up. You and I will have a conversation at some time. I'm not acting in a legal capacity. I'm acting as mayor. There's no more discussion on this. Are we moving this to the work session?
So at this point, there's no motion on this, except we're going to go ahead and...
I want to be certain that we have this exactly how it's going to happen. So.
There must be people out there who want to address this.
I'll ask them. I want to make sure we're certain on the board, on the council here, how we're going to do this. I'm hearing that our work session is the 20th, correct?
Correct.
We will have comments by what day to City Manager Reeves for all the people on, I've already made my comments on this, so the rest of council, when could you make your comments?
I will provide those by the end of the week.
End of week? Okay.
That's fine.
So by end of the week, that's the deadline to have comments to City Manager Reeves. He will redo the contract or redo the RFP. We will set up a special session in addition to our work session. This council already said the consensus to send this thing out as an RFQ. Our city attorney stays in the position that he's in. He's not being relieved of his duties. He's free to bid on this. Jackie Spoto can bid on it individually or as part of his firm. I'm not sure how they're organized. Anyone can bid on this, as long as they meet the criteria. And that's the way we'll handle it.
Do we need a motion?
Okay.
Do you want to hear from the
Let's do it. Let's put, well, actually, let's citizen comments first. Yes, sir.
My name is Rudy Davis. I live at 612 Belle Isle Avenue. I've been a resident of the city for almost 20 years. I'm a former mayor. I've served on almost every committee and board in the city, so I can speak with some experience. It's hard for me to understand how this council, who collectively has the shortest term in those seats of any council in recent memory, we're almost all new to the seat. When you need all the experience and help you can get from the city staff, and especially from the city attorney, with historical perspective, over 20 years of service to this city, and one of the first things on your agenda is to get rid of that experience and that knowledge that will help you. Don't understand that. There was also a comment that I read in the work session transcribed notes, and I think I need to address it as on a different subject. When you have a council member and you're proposing to replace a city engineer, say in that meeting that, oh, I know someone who could give us a heck of a better price, that's conflict of interest and dangerous legal ground. You need to keep this city manager until you have your, this city attorney, until you have your feet on the ground a little better. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, council members, city manager, city attorney, JCM Phil, 3221 Hibiscus Drive East, a street too tough to die. I will say that I've been on every committee for the last 21 years you can think of, especially the Police Pension Board, which can be a little testy at times. And as chairman, I relied on Paul many times. My question is, in the 21 years I've been in this city, why all of a sudden is this going out for bids? I've never heard of it. Is it in the charter that it has to be bid on? That's my question. Are we fixing something that doesn't need fixed? Are we looking for something? I remember when I ran the detention home in another state, there was a riot. Everybody starts yelling at each other. And somebody said, do something, even if it's wrong. Well, let's not get into that. If the man is wrong and doing something wrong, that's a different story. But I saw the diatribe going back and forth, and there's some underlying something or another. I'm also a licensed professional clinical counselor. I can read a lot of people. I'm not too sure what's going on, but keep your eyes open. Don't fix something that isn't broke. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor? Wait, one second.
I'm sorry, let's hear from Mr.
Okay.
Leslie Notero, 2300 Gulf Boulevard. I agree totally with what Mr. Infeld and Mr. Davis have said. I think it's an absolute waste of time, energy, and money to go out for bid. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have a wonderful record. We've stayed out of the news. Every other city around here has been sued for something. We have not. And a lot of that is due to Mr. Marino. So I think this is a waste of time to go out for an RFP.
Thank you. Another citizen comment?
Wanda Square, 512 Belle Isle Avenue, 517 Belle Isle, I'm sorry. Rather than repeats that a lot of what's already been said, I just want to quote something that I had a conversation with former Mayor Martinson. When she was mayor, the city did a survey of retainer and billing rates of municipal attorneys for similar sized cities. The decision was made, I don't know if it was a decision, it was just a survey, to keep Mr. Marino as his experience as municipal attorney for multiple Tampa Bay area municipalities, his many years of institutional knowledge of Bel Air Beach, his record of keeping our city out of unnecessary litigation, the lower rates, and his vested interest in our city as a resident scored very highly with the council and the mayor. He has served our city for over 20 years. I've lived here for 20 years now. I started out in 2005, I believe, on the park board, and then my 5 years there, a couple years later, I came with 8 years on council. I've worked with Mr. Marino on a couple of boards and on council, and I value his input. And just kind of watching the news and what's going on in other cities around here, I think he's done a very valuable service for us, and I think we should be very thankful for that. Thank you, Paul.
Any other citizen comments? Vice Mayor Gunn, you have a comment?
Right. So far we've heard from all the 20-year people. And the common thread among the 20-year people is that nothing's broken, why fix it? And yet we have a group of people up here at the council who aren't over 2 years. And they came to the council because they thought some things weren't quite right, or that they weren't all roses, and maybe perhaps some things were broken or could be done better, and that's why we're sitting here. And that's what this is about. It has nothing to do with Paul Marino. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It's about open-ended contracts and old contracts that we have to sit back and possibly review and see if time has changed the requirements. That's what this drill is all about. If anybody's got any favorites, the requirements are going to go out on the street and everybody applies just like everybody else. And the criteria will be set for how we figure out who is the best value for this city. So that's the common thread that I saw here in these comments. A lot of the 20-year people standing up there saying nothing's broken, let's not fix anything. And yet you got a lot of new people up here saying the reason why we came to the council was because we didn't like the way things appeared on the outside. And we want to get inside and take a closer look at things. And I think that's where this is going. So with that said, I move that we take item number 9. I will supply the city manager with some greater granularity and detail on what I think needs to be added, and we take it to the May 20th work session and open it for discussion there and see what kind of consensus we come up with. The consensus will be either it dies on the vine or we move forward and put it up for putting on the street for an RFQ.
Let me just say, we have that motion. I want to. Well, let's get second first.
Second.
Okay. Now let's open it for comment. I want to put my comments in. I want that deadline, Madam Clerk, to be rigidly enforced, please. Okay, if comments come in by this Friday, this Friday, then they're in. If not, they don't get added. We're not going to make this take forever. It's been 2 months already. As for the 20-year people, the it's not broke crowd, okay? I didn't see it that way either. I agree with Vice Mayor Gunn. I said it is broke. 1 second. This attorney, while I was running, wrote a letter, which is public record, telling me that I couldn't park on our streets in campaign. You want to know what's unconstitutional? That's First Amendment violation. So there's one. I'll give you about 20 more. But I'm not going to do that tonight. He's our attorney. He is our attorney now, and he will be our attorney possibly for many, many, many years. He's free to bid. Jackie Spoto's free to bid, as is any licensed attorney who meets the RFP, RFQ requirements. No one's been terminated. No one's looking to terminate anyone. This council has a responsibility to spend the money of this city as wisely as possible. There are plenty of qualified attorneys out there, and I intend for my vote to vote for the best one. I go to many meetings of mayors and other cities. I know these other attorneys, who they are. I hear from the mayors and I hear what their opinions are of those individuals. We're not going to debate tonight who gets this job. Right now, Paul Marino has this job. And it's his to bid on if he wishes again when we go out to bid. He can bid again. No one's stopping him. With that said, audience comments are closed at this point, so now we're to any other comments on council and then to a vote. Can we do a voice vote? Or we got to go individually?
Whichever you prefer.
Let's go individually.
This vote is just to move it to the work session.
Yes. What's before is to move this to the work session. All comments on this RFP that was placed out tonight are due by Friday of this week directly to City Manager Reeves. And then discussion to occur at the next work session scheduled for the 20th with a special session to vote on this and send it out for proposal and for outside bidding, which everyone is entitled to bid on. Yes?
Vote. Councilmember Aki.
Aye.
Councilmember Beam.
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis.
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Councilmember Swope.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn.
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Proclamation. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take all the items that were on the consent agenda that remained, which were, I believe, I'm sorry, we have to do number 10, which is the proclamation of Memorial Day. That's on the consent agenda. May 27th is Memorial Day in the cities and towns throughout our nation. I'm just going to summarize this. It was a holiday started in May 1868 by Major John Logan. It's a national day of remembrance for those who passed away, who died in the wars giving us our freedom in this country. And our city, Bel Air Beach, wishes to recognize not only the people that may have come from Bel Air Beach, but from Pinellas County, from the state of Florida, and from the United States, the men and women that gave their lives in getting us the democracy that we now have. So we never want to forget that, and so we are declaring that May 27th, Memorial Day, is Memorial Day, and we're recognizing that in the city of Bel Air Beach, and that's what the proclamation is. That's item number 10 on the consent agenda. So what we had left on the consent agenda after we moved everything to the regular agenda was item number 8, authorize the city manager to advertise for miscellaneous professional engineering services, and number 11, of course, the proclamation for Dorothy Van Rohr's birthday, and number 10, the proclamation for Memorial Day. Do we have consensus that the consent agenda is passed? All in favor? Aye. And all against? Passes unanimously. We moved items 5, 6, 7 to the regular agenda. I can, Madam Clerk, however you'd like, I can go individually or collectively on that.
Which do you prefer?
Whatever will work for you. Take them collectively? We will need a motion for each one, so motion and a second then. So I have a motion and a second on item number 5, approval of the work session minutes, 3 work session minutes and council minutes. Second, by Glenn Gunn. We have a primary was? So moved. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Item 6, this is to authorize the city manager to obtain a binding estimate from Duke Energy for undergrounding the utilities on Harrison Avenue. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
So moved.
Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. Item 6 passes. Finally, item 7, authorization to enter into an agreement with Spectrum for undergrounding of the cable wires along Gulf Boulevard from 1st to 12th Street. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Move. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Consent agenda and the regular agenda, at least up until item 11 is complete. We're now moved to item 12 on the regular agenda, correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We have consideration of ordinance 18-11B. It's really a correction on the ordinance. I believe it's customary that we go with the township attorney to read this or read part of it that we have to make our change on. Essentially, there's two words in here that are potentially going to cause problems. So that it's just really, it's almost a Scrivener's error. It's just something that needs to be corrected, but we have to go through the full 3-reading process of amending an ordinance. With that said, council, do you have to read the ordinance or part of it?
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, correcting ordinance 1811. More specifically, section 94-251, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Council, audience, any concerns or questions on the adopt or change on this ordinance?
Yeah, I just want to know what it is. What's the fence wall got to do with the price of tea in China?
I can't hear you. You have to come up, identify yourself, and please put it on the record.
Hi, Robert Sample, 1020 Cedar Drive. What's fence or wall in this? I mean, what's the problem?
There's an ambiguity in the original ordinance.
Read the original to me so I know what the ambiguity is.
Well, do you have it? Do you have it in front of you right now?
Oh, I have whatever this is.
What is this?
This is the agenda.
Okay, here's the ordinance. You take this. And you'll see where the ambiguity is. This thing, that section talks about hedges, and yet there's a reference to walls and fences in there that needs to come out. That creates confusion in the wording of that particular subsection under, I think it's chapter 94. You see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Where it's crossed out?
Yes, I do. So it's just going to be a hedge as opposed to...
That section is going to be dealing strictly with hedges, not walls and fences. That's correct.
So why are fences and walls being removed?
They're covered somewhere else.
It's actually covered in the sentence before. It says, on property bounded in whole or part by any body of water, a fence, comma, wall, comma, and/or hedge shall not exceed a height of 6 feet in the required setback. That's fine. Then it says right now, a fence, wall, or hedge shall not exceed a height of 4 feet in the required rear setback. So there is the ambiguity. That has to change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? That's what we're looking to do, so it needs to be cleaned up. Any other comments from the audience? Comments are closed. At this point, we can go voice vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking, this is the first reading. This is not to pass the ordinance, this is just for the first reading.
Correct. And a roll call vote, correct? Yes. Okay. Councilmember Aki?
Aye.
Councilmember Bean?
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis?
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley?
Aye.
Councilmember Swope?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn?
Aye.
Mayor Manzo?
Aye. Passes 7-0. Now, there'll be 2 more readings of this in case there's any changes, if any, or 1 more reading of this, and then it's final?
Correct.
Final on the 3rd, I thought.
Second reading.
Final on the 2nd, okay. So 1 more reading. If anybody sees any issues with this, you have 1 more chance to change it at our next meeting. If not, it's going to go through. Item 13 is a request, I'm never going to be able to get this name right, Zulaha Spathiotre to reduce code enforcement case 17-21, reduce fees and fines. City Manager Reeves, do you want to introduce this or you want me to get it into motion first?
Well, I'll explain it to you and then
And we'll get into motion. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna call him Issa. It's easier than trying to get the name. He came, he had a code enforcement fine last year. He offered to pay us $1,000 on a fine that at that time was $13,746. It was for a code enforcement issue for some time that didn't get corrected, and he finally removed, he had a spa, and he removed it finally, but it took a few months to get it done. So he was accumulating a fine. The consul at that time told me that I could negotiate a 50% reduction in the fine and go ahead and settle this. I passed that on to Issa, so I don't tear up his name. And he did not respond to him. A couple of weeks ago, I happened to be on Harrison Avenue about another house on that street that we're having issues with, and I saw Issa, and I stopped and talked to him, and I said, when are you going to come and let's settle this thing? And him and I, he said, $14,000 at the time's a lot of money, and we discussed it back and forth, and we sort of came to an agreement, if the council would approve it, that we would take $5,000 if he sent me a letter, which he brought in a couple days later after I talked to him. And he was willing to give me the check that day. And I said, no, I don't want the check. I want to take this to council and see if they will settle this. And I'm recommending that we settle this and remove the lien. So it's up to the council at this point.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. On council? I have a question. I'm sorry.
I've gone back and forth on this, when we first agreed on 50% of it. I think we were trying to send a message that we were firm in our resolve and to put teeth in code enforcement. And but we understood the mitigating circumstances of, hey, this thing was getting pretty big or whatever. So I'm kind of conflicted about going with less than 50% right now. We initially went with 50%, but I also understand the realities of, hey, let's close the books on this one and move on to something else. And all I want to ask is, if we change our threshold on this and go below that 50% where we were trying to put teeth in this thing, is it going to impact any future business that you might try to accomplish with code enforcement?
No, I don't think it is. We have very few of these, of this large amount. I can remember one that was 15 or 16 years ago, and the code fine got up to like $45,000. And, we settled it, I think, at that time for like 15 or 16. Marv, you might remember that. But the point is, we got compliance, and that's really what code enforcement's about, getting compliance. It just took him a little longer to do what he was supposed to do, so that's why we have the fines. But, I think at this point, if Issa's willing to pay the $5,000, I think we should settle this. We've got about, I'll say, our cost with the code, magistrate, city time, mailing, somewhere in the $1,200 range. So it's not like it's coming out of our pocket. And I think a fine of $5,000 is a pretty stiff fine for someone to pay for this. So it's really up to the council.
Mr. Reeves, we have a lien on the property now?
Yes.
It's my understanding that I looked this up today, it's a homestead property, correct?
Yes.
And it's also my understanding of the law that we could basically wait till
20 years.
Dead and gone. We may never get it if he keeps it homesteaded. It can just stay as a lien forever and a day. Until it becomes non-homestead, we really have no.
Right, and just to clarify, a code lien is only good for 20 years. So if Issa lives 20 years, then this is nothing, you know.
He is willing to pay it immediately. That answered one of my questions. So you're sure that we have to amend this to say, well, the one note that I had to myself was $5,000 if by May 31st, $6,000 if by June 30th, but you think he'll pay this thing?
No, I'll contact him tomorrow. He was willing to hand me a check on April 22nd. And I said, I don't want your check, just wait till I take it to, and I told him I was bringing it to the council tonight.
Historically, I was at this session, although I was not on council, but historically, my understanding was that it was approximately 25% or so. Sometimes that you settled, things were settled for as low as 25% on the dollar in the past.
I only recollect we really only had one other really big one, and that was that one that was like $40,000. And that was a house construction issue back in, gosh, Marv, do you remember? 2002 or something?
That would be 1908.
We settled it? I don't remember, but
You don't remember nobody else.
Mike might remember it, because it was his neighbor.
2005.
Okay, so 15 years, that was a pretty lucky guess. So I would recommend that the council takes this and we close this out. And once he pays, then I'll ask Patty to release the lien.
Any other council comments or questions? Citizen comments or questions? That being closed, we can move to a vote. Vote now is to accept $5,000 in settlement of all liens, fines, and amounts owed from, how do you say his name, Mr. Zhu? Mr. Zulu?
His name is Issa, that's how
Issa,
I talked to him.
So, Mr. Issa, the case that we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, so that's what's before the board at this point. It's $5,000 settlement, immediate payment.
Councilmember Aki?
Aye.
Councilmember Beam?
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis?
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley?
Aye.
Councilmember Swope?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn?
Aye.
Mayor Manzo?
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. City manager, you'll please collect the $5,000. Thank you. Finally, we move on to number 14, what everybody's been waiting for, the reconsideration and reappointment of several board positions. The first board position that comes up before us is the reconsideration, or the consideration of a reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Board. We have a 2-year position right now that is coming up for a 2-year cycle. It's set to expire in August of this year or July 31st. This will take us through August 1st, 2022. We have 2 candidates. Before we get into that, there's been a change. So Rudy Davis is candidate number 1, June Van Scoy is candidate number 2. So I have to announce something to the audience and to the council that I don't think is a secret. Ms. Van Scoy and I live together. We've been partners for 5 years. Under the Florida law, and I looked this up today in council, I will count on you to tell me if there's anything wrong with what my research is. Under the Florida law, it defines relative quite huge. It goes through every blood relative you can think about, and I was good up until the point that they had any person who lives in your household or lives at your address. She does in fact live at my address. So I would be ethically prohibited from voting for or against her or participating in this portion of this decision. So with that, I am going to respectfully step aside. Madam Clerk, it's my understanding that, and we'll see how many others, because depending on what happens, she might want to be considered for other stuff. I'm right now stepping aside on item number 14. I believe I owe you a report, and council, I'd like you to confirm this with me. I believe Florida law requires that I give a report within 15 days to the clerk as to why I'm not voting on this, and I intend to do that.
I think there's a specific form that you just have to fill out. You can still maintain managing the council meeting administratively. You don't have to step away so the vice mayor takes over. You just can't vote on it.
Vice Mayor Gunn, would you, I don't want any inference that there could be anything wrong. I don't intend to ask any questions of the 2 applicants. Would you take over this portion of it, please, for me, as a request?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to step aside on that portion. Vice Mayor Gunn, item number 14.
Okay, again, we're looking at regular agenda item number 14, consideration of appointment to the Planning and Zoning Board. We have two applicants, Mr. Davis and Ms. Van Squire. Because we only have 6 members who will be voting for this, I'm going to, up front, if we have a tie, we're going to resolve how we're going to solve this. So I would say that in the event of a tie, 3-3, it's just a flip of a coin by the city clerk, and I'll allow the candidates to determine who calls heads or tails. But up until this point, let's go ahead and give each candidate a couple minutes to step up to the podium and introduce themselves and tell us perhaps why they're best qualified for appointment to the Planning and Zoning Board. So, Mr. Davis?
Rudy Davis, 612 Belle Isle Avenue. As stated, I lived in the city for nearly 20 years. I've served on the Board of Adjustment. I've served on this board, Planning and Zoning prior. We have not had a review come for us, so it was not an active one, but also served on most of the committees, and such as the City Manager Search Committee, and the City Hall Planning and Study. I think my experience as a mayor and all those 20 years of active participation in our city government qualifies me for a very intimate knowledge of how this city is run, what this city's past and present and future should look like, and I'd be glad to serve at council's approval.
Do any of the council members have any questions for Mr. Davis? Citizens, any comments or questions for Mr. Davis?
I have a question more regarding the board. Is there anything coming up that's going to be important work-wise as far as, Lynn shaking his head no to me. There's nothing, okay.
Isn't there a review coming up?
That's what I thought, possibly a
21.
review.
It was 2 years.
21.
Yes, comments, citizens?
There he is again. Chairman of the Planning Board and Zoning Board. There's nothing that we're aware of. We have not been notified of anything that's pending the Planning and Zoning Board. But we will find out from the city clerk if there is. And I can pitch something here that I personally asked Rudy when we were looking for members to serve with me, because I know his experience was beyond reproach. This is why I asked and was very satisfied with his acceptance. As chairman, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Van Squire?
Good evening. I have served on the Planning and Zoning Board for Pinellas County in 2009, 2010 as a citizen, and then at 2011 as a county employee. I've been a supervisor for Pinellas County, part of the EAC, supervisor. I was part of the Pinellas County Emergency Operations Center. I worked on special projects with Pinellas County Utilities for the taxation. Of course, also been PTA president, stuff like that. Save Kids, ran organizations, businesses, and I've also lobbied in Tallahassee for the Pinellas County School Board. I ask that this board take in consideration my experience with Pinellas County government. Yes, it's not been with the city of Bel Air Beach, but I am a resident. I have been a resident for 5 years in Bel Air Beach. And as the council can see, I have quite a bit of a big background within government, volunteering, working, and representing the county. So I ask that you consider my candidacy for that position. Thank you.
Council members, any questions?
I have a question, and maybe not necessarily for June, but just in general. You're applying for this position and also the parks?
If I should not get voted on for this, I would, my second choice, because it even says it on the application, that you can apply for multiple, would be the parks, yes, correct.
And we have an open board position with parks with this email we received today, correct?
Yes.
Is that correct, Patty?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Citizens, any questions? Okay, no further discussion or introductions. This is going to be a ballot vote, is that correct? Great. We'll give the city clerk a minute to tally the scores, and when you're ready, Patty, just go ahead and let us know.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Beam. Mr. Davis. Councilmember Aki. Mr. Davis. Councilmember Gaddis. Mr. Davis. Vice Mayor Gunn, Ms. Van Scoy, Councilmember Shirley, Mr. Davis, Councilmember Swope, Mr. Davis.
Votes 5 for Mr. Davis and 1 for June Van Scoy. I might be saying that wrong, but
Congratulations to Mr. Davis. He's been reappointed to the Planning and Zoning Board. Thank you very much for your service.
Madam Clerk, do you have to swear in, or is that done at a later point?
At their meeting normally, or we can just do, it wouldn't be today.
Do it at
No.
the meeting, that's fine. Okay, so next we come with item 15, which is consideration of reappointment of Park and Recreation Board member. I believe we have Robert Semple and June Van Scoy again, so I will once again recuse myself for the same reasons given on the record before and turn this meeting over to Glenn Gunn, Vice Mayor.
Patty, would you review who the candidates are?
Mr. Canny has withdrawn his application, and that would be Robert Sample and June Van Scoy.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open the floor again to Mr. Sample and Ms. Van Scoy to step up to the podium and give us a few remarks.
Hi. I wasn't expecting this, to be honest with you, but I currently am the chairman of the board, and I've been the chairman of the board, I guess, for about the last 5 years. I think it's 5, might even be a bit longer. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I do, and we meet, and I've never had to go through this before, so that's all I'm gonna say, because it's all there is I can say. I mean, it's Parks and Rec, and that's, you know, we meet and we approve things, and we've got a lot on our agenda, I will say that much, and I think we're moving forward in a great way. However, I'm not into politics, so That's all I'm gonna say, thanks.
Can you give us like a 30-second soundbite on what that vision is, or what's on the?
Yeah, I can actually give you a 30-second soundbite. Number one, we got this beautiful park right out here, and right now, we're in the process of getting grants approved to redevelop this park and do something a lot more beautiful than it is right now. And I'm very proud to say that the plans that have been presented to us are amazing. We'll have a fishing ramp here, we'll have a walkway out under the water, we'll have watching courts, we'll redo the playground. As you know, the basketball court's already being done. We're going to redo the tennis courts. In other words, and also, how about a restroom facility for folks to come and use our park? And repave the street, and things will look a whole lot better and a whole lot nicer and a whole lot more fun, and I hope you all will enjoy using the park as opposed to not coming. And I do live right nearby, so I'm in it every single day, so thank you.
Any citizens' questions? Ms. Van Scoy.
I admit that he has been chairman of that board for 5 years, but again, like this council, all new members, let's make a change. I bring to the table a big background working with children, organizations within the community, and helping to improve things all around. If you look at my volunteering in my organizations, I not only ran swim teams, I was a Girl Scout leader, a Boy Scout leader, PTA president, youth director of a church for 3 years. I do hold a current school board ID with Pinellas County Schools. I've ran Vacation Bible School, lobbied for the school system in Tallahassee, ran book fairs, ran spring festivals, and I think I bring to the table the new vision that this city needs to get more community involvement. And not trying to belittle what he has done or accomplished at all, by no means, because for 5 years is a great thing for someone who has volunteered their time that long. But keeping with the theme of this city, trying to bring in basically new blood to try to revitalize this city, to make us a premier city. And that's what I hope I bring to the table. Thank you.
Council, any questions? Citizens, any questions for Ms. Van Scoy?
Vice Mayor, there's 2 full positions, so you don't need a ballot. You can approve them both. Now that we have a resignation. So it's really a moot point at this point.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and call for a motion to go ahead and install these 2 applicants. City clerk, is that a point of order here? Is one is a full point, full?
No, they're both full.
They're full?
Yeah. Pardon?
I'm not participating, I'm just stating what I read as a fact. I believe one is a short term and one is a two-year term, and the other is until September of this year, if I'm not mistaken. If you could just check the record, I don't think they're equal positions, although they're both permanent positions.
Yeah, that could be.
One will expire on September 14th of 2019, and the other one is expired now, so that would be a full 2-year term.
So it's so close, I mean, is it really worth distinguishing between the 2? Does it matter?
Well, you would have to name 1 to each one. You would have to choose.
Mr. Sample's asking for reappointment, and that's what he's asking for. And the other full-time position is because Mr. Kennedy dropped out.
Correct.
So which is the longer term right now?
Mr. Sample's term, because it's a full term.
So let's go the first round for the full term vote. And if you pass out the ballots. And the winner of this ballot will go in the full term, and the second will go in the part term. Is that satisfactory with everybody?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, the way the ballot is written is how it was originally presented, so, you know, you'll have to make your choices, you know, like who you want as one in which term, okay? Just let me show it to you and see if it's confusing.
Well, we will just vote for one person. We'll scratch out the person who's withdrawn his application, and then...
I'll be returning these same ballots for the second vote, because I don't have extra ballots.
Well, no. The person who was selected by this first ballot will fill the full term.
The full term. so
Exactly, and then automatically the second person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Councils? Okay, good.
Councilmember Beam, Mr. Sample, Councilmember Aki, Ms. Vanscoy, Vice Mayor Gunn, Ms. Vanscoy, Councilmember Gaddis, Ms. Vanscoy, Councilmember Swope, Mr. Sample, Councilmember Shirley, Ms. Vanscoy.
I'm not going to butcher this name again, but June Van Scoy. Four votes, Robert Sample, 2 votes. So,
Okay, so congratulations to both applicants. Ms. Vanscoy, you'll fill the full term, and you'll fill the remainder of the second position. Is that correct? Thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
I'll fill the remainder of my mayor's term here for this council session. Congratulations, June Van Scoy and Robert Semple. That takes care of items 14 and 15. Now, item 16, I think because we have moved Ms. Van Scoy up, we have an opening still on the Parks and Recreation Board for the alternate member, and that will have to be sent back out and brought back up at another council meeting, correct, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
Okay, so we have nothing else to vote on that. The next one and the final one that we have is the Board of Adjustment. We have 2 candidates for this right now, and one is Mr. John J. Hayes, and the other individual is Joshua Hollis. Mr. Hayes, are you here?
Yeah.
Would you like to address council?
Thank you, council. My name is John Hayes. I've been a resident of Bel Air Beach for only 3 years, though we have owned our condominium since 1997 here in Bel Air Beach. I was a snowbird, and I was a CPA originally when I went to work in 1978, and I'm now retired, and I hated debits and credits. So I became a real estate developer, sort of by fault, by becoming a chief financial officer. And the rest of my business career from 1978 till 2015 was as a real estate developer in the Midwest, based in Michigan. We built apartments, bought apartments, rehabbed apartments, did billions of dollars of investments with that over the term of almost 40 years. And real estate's my life, and it was my life till I retired in 2015. And I know real estate, and I've always been active with nonprofits and the like, and I enjoy participating. So I'm here in Bel-Air Beach, retired, wanting to do something. I want to become involved, and that's why I'm here, to work to help the city if I can in any way with my real estate experience, and I thought this would be a good way to participate. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Stay right there. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Hayes? I have one for you if you don't mind. Being a fellow CPA, how long have you been a CPA and when were you still active? Or
No. I meant it when I said I really didn't like debits and credits.
neither.
So I got my CPA, practiced in public accounting for 5 years in the 1970s, and then I took a job with a for-profit real estate developer.
Do we have any questions or comments from the citizens? Thank you, Mr. Hayes, and thank you for trying to get involved here. We appreciate that. Next, we have Joshua Hollis. Mr. Hollis?
Joshua Hollis, 1147th Street. I felt pretty good about myself until Declan showed up with his credentials. My educational background is in computers. I have a degree in information technology and currently in grad school getting my master's in cybersecurity. I've worked for Shriners Hospital for 13 years, and I'm currently there as well. The main reason I'm running is because I love the city and the people here. I have a long history with Bel-Air Beach. I've purchased our land in 2007. We started building in 2017 and finished in 2018. So I've been a resident for less than a year, but I've owned the property for about 12 now. The people that I've met, the people that I've met here has treated me like family. Just last week, there's a couple who bought a new Jaguar, and they brought it home that day, and they handed me the keys and said, go take it for a spin. I've only known them for about 6 months. Yeah, the reason why I'm running is because I love the city and I love the people who are here. Yeah, that I can serve the community the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Do we have questions on the council for Mr. Hollis? I have one. When you built your house, did you get involved with any of the planning, zoning, any type of variances or any of the permitting with the construction?
I had a builder that we hired, and I designed the floor plan myself, complying with the city ordinances of what's allowed, what's not allowed. Made a few changes when the city denied our plans and passed them back and forth. I'm not a contractor. The builder handled that portion of it. But that experience did give me some insight on the permitting process that I think would help in this position.
Did I hear you right? You said you designed your entire house?
The floor plan, the layout, yeah.
So you're pretty familiar with the codes then, clearly, because you've had some firsthand experience.
Right, I had
reading
to
through the code book to
see what's permitted, what's not permitted, setbacks, all that type of stuff.
Any other council questions? Citizens, any questions for Mr. Hollis? And I also thank you for attempting to get involved here. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk?
Thank you.
Councilmember Aki, Mr. Hollis. Councilmember Bean, Mr. Hollis. Mayor Manzo, Mr. Hollis. Councilmember Gaddis, Mr. Hollis. Vice Mayor Gunn, Mr. Hollis. Councilmember Shirley, Mr. Hollis. Councilmember Swope, Mr. Hayes.
The vote is 6 for Mr. Hollis, 1 for Mr. Hayes.
Congratulations, Mr. Hollis. That completes our regular agenda. We're going to move into city attorney, city manager. However, we were supposed to take a photograph, I believe, for sunset. It looks like it's more like moonrise here, but what should we be doing? Can we do that inside now, or if we can do a brief adjournment,
Right.
which we might have to do, I know.
That's up to you, you know, how, council, how you would prefer the picture to be. Well, I can't say that. The photographer is set up outside, Mayor.
I know we do have a lot of people inside. Is this something that, I hate to inconvenience him, but we have a lot of citizens here. We still have a decent amount of this agenda, and there's quite a bit of important information still. I hate to do this. I would love to have an outside one. It took a little longer than expected here. Can we do it inside? Can we have him set up? I mean, does anyone have a problem in staying a few minutes afterward to get this photograph? This is for the Florida League of Cities, I believe, right?
Correct.
Yes, so it's pretty important. We want to have our council.
Or check with the photographer, and maybe we need to reschedule. I don't know how inconvenient it is for him.
Pardon?
I don't know how inconvenient it is for the photographer. I mean, we may need to consider rescheduling rather than.
Well, he'll do what we ask him to, you know, then. What?
To the city clerk.
Glenn, a lot of those pictures of Florida League of Cities magazine are usually done with the dais. They shoot the dais of the council and as a whole, which shouldn't be a problem.
A brief adjournment. We had people walking away. Are we on an adjournment? I can call one.
It's a recess, Mr. Mayor, not adjournment.
How do you call it? So, yes, please. Okay, we're going to stand in recess for 5 minutes, and let's find out where the photographer's at. The attorney, and this is actually the position report, so we move to city attorney first.
The only thing I have to report on is, we received a notice of claim from Morgan & Morgan on behalf of Sidney Schmidt, slip and fall on 2100 block of Gulf Boulevard. So we sent that over to our carrier to handle routinely, but there was a public records request built into that package of materials from the attorney from Morgan & Morgan, and I'm working with the city clerk to get that part of it resolved. We have told the attorney that we don't have jurisdiction on Gulf Boulevard, it's all county, and I haven't heard back yet. That's the only thing I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for city attorney? Our audience has dwindled. Any questions from the audience? Thank you. City manager, Lynn Reeves.
Yes, just a reminder, we have our board appreciation luncheon on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. The new board members, Patty will send out to make sure they're notified, and I don't know who the city council has said they're coming, but please let Patty know. I was asked to get some pricing to put a concrete sidewalk along the Belle Isle, and we just went out and got an estimate. It would have to be bid anyway, but it will range in the $20,000 to $25,000 just for the concrete. And the other issue is a railing may need to be put along that seawall because of the limitation of the height if we raise the concrete. There would have to be a footer put on it on the, if you're looking at it this way going down Belle Isle, there would have to be a footer put on the left side because of the tilt to the road. And if we ever had, we would be covering the anchors from the seawall also. I would, if the council has interest in doing that, then we would need to put that in the next year's budget or approve it sooner. I have heard from one resident that said if they put a railing up, they have no interest in doing that across the street. And it's basically 600 foot of sidewalk that just goes along the seawall. So, and I spoke to Councilmember Shirley about this previously. We received the final asset survey that we had the Florida League of Cities do. We're going through that. There's some things on there that, I mean, they count everything, and we don't need to insure trash cans and stuff like that, so we'll be doing some adjustment on that. The awareness program for hurricanes, I got a preliminary date right today, actually the 20th of June. They're trying to get, the Pinellas and Coast Fire District will help with that. They're getting the girl from Emergency Management, her name is Mary Burrell, and a couple other people to participate in that. So we'll plan that for June, as long as all the participants can do it on the 20th. That's the plan at this point. This week, we're doing our prep, the city staff. Tomorrow we have a rock call, which is the hurricane information call. Instead of a call, we're having a meeting. We're testing our communication in the morning with Pinellas County. And then Thursday afternoon, the staff is going to go to our EOC, which first line of defense is St. Jerome's Parish. So we'll be doing that and doing a practice exercise all week with the county. They're already sending out notices of storm awareness. There was some questions about the CERT team. That is on the fourth Wednesday, and I put something at your position there that talks about it, and we'll put that on the website. It's the Community Response Emergency Response Team, and people can sign up for that. And then they meet from January to October at St. Jerome's Church, and there's an address. And we'll put this up on the website. I'll ask Marshall to send it to me in a regular document. So. I've been speaking to the consultant about the personnel updates. When I talk about that, I mean the personnel manual. And I've got an agreement with her, and she's going to look at our personnel manual. And she did state she's already reviewed it. It's not a lot that needs to be changed. We do have some things that I know some of the council members ask about, and we'll work through that. And she'll review our job descriptions and develop an evaluation form to kind of help that way that the council had asked me to do that. We did get Acrobat Reader, and Patty is converting documents to new things. So they're a screen reader, and I want to thank Councilmember Gaddis for his help. He spent quite a bit of time working with Patty and me on getting it, we think, right. But it's a work in progress, but at least we're moving forward. We put the agenda back up on the website, and other documents we're doing as we can get to it. But we're not going to go backwards. There was a question about Pinellas County, the capturing service. Pinellas County doesn't do that themselves. They actually, and what I'm talking about is on YouTube where the words are underneath it. They do not do that. They hire a service to do that. So they said we could get an in-quarter for about $30,000. So I'm like, I don't know if that's on the top of our priority list, but we'll check further into that. I also gave you, we talked about changing our holiday decorations. Well, we need to replace them. So I gave you some pictures to look at, and I'll get get back with you on those, probably at the work session. I'll ask you for your comments on them, and we can update them, because our current banners at Christmas time they're pretty bad. And I'm not gonna plan on renewing the contract with our lighting provider next year. We'll somehow do our own lighting ourselves and put the banners up ourselves. So there'll be a cost up front for the banners and stuff, but after that, it'll be managing the lift rental each year for, I don't know, I think we were paying somewhere around $8,000 a year for the decoration, so we're gonna cut that back, other than a rental. And I will be at the hurricane conference next week. And the last thing I have is an update on the Bellevue Estates Island undergrounding project. And I've given you a copy of this with a little spreadsheet. The vice mayor actually and I put this together and he's going to send something out to the residents in that area. They have a small thing, but the boring, we're ahead of schedule. So far, the weather hasn't hurt us. The big portion of it with the new pulling the wires isn't scheduled till the end of July, but we will be talking to them. We're under budget right now, about $132,000. We've saved from the boring and conduit installation and spectrum and the overhead utility conversion. The only thing that's really outstanding is the subaqueous boring, and that's with Duke, and it has to be they're obtaining a permit, and that process can take some time. But we've already paid for it, so that's paid for in so what may happen is they may do an overhead over the bridge on 22nd Street as opposed to having it underground initially, but once they get the permit and everything, they'll do that subaqueous bore. Streetlights, everyone knows we're doing solar. There's some stakes along the curb that we put out, the vendor has. And we're looking at a couple things. He sent me a couple ideas and he's supposed to be getting back to me about the mounting. He suggested using helical, which is basically something that spins into the mountain instead of pouring concrete. But he's got some answers he's got to give me, like the life expectancy and what effect that would have on the sand and salt environment we have. When we get to the new putting the power on, right now they project they'll do 6 to 8 houses per day, but it could be 6 to 8 houses per morning and the same in the afternoon if everything goes well. And the diagram that I gave you on the last page is just kind of a timeline of where we're at right now. So I think the undergrounding project went better than most would have thought. I think the contractor's done a very good job. The consultant we're using has done a very good job. They're very cognizant of the residents down there, and I have spoken to several residents and they seem very happy with what's going on. And they're starting putting the transformer pads in today, or Friday on Louisa. The last thing I have is the code enforcement report. We added a last line to talk about the status of, so you kind of see that after Laura talks to the people, we go back and make sure that the violation is corrected as much as possible, and or a permit's issued or whatever it is. And we have sent letters out to the ones that haven't taken care of certain things. So if you don't have any questions for me, one last thing. The Mayor Council Hotline is active. So we'll be advertising that on the website. The number is 229-8449. And that voicemail goes to Patty. And if one comes in for any of you will send it to you. So, that's everything, unless you have questions for me.
I have a question. How was the location of each street light, how was that determined?
Through photometrics.
And is there a specific distance between each street light, or how is that working?
Well, it was developed with photometric shooting over the top of it. I have a report, if the council wants that, I can send that to them. It actually depicts where every street light. Right now, like you live in Bellevue Estates Island, there's a stake. Some people may have pulled them out of the ground, but the gentleman who put stakes in told me he put a piece of metal down there underneath the stake, because he said that happens all the time. And so it's based on illumination. And the other thing that he looked at was the sunlight direction. So that's why they may be on one side of the street or the other, depending on where it's at.
I guess my question is, am I going to need sunglasses at night?
Well, I can make it that way if you want. Because these solar lights allow me to Bluetooth them, and I can change the intensity. So if you want a suntan, I can take care of that.
Exactly.
The one on the bridge is at what, 75%?
60. Yeah, I had it the first time at, I think I had it at like 80 or 85, and I guess it was like, and then it overused the battery, so I went back, what's wrong with this? So, you know, it's very simple to change it.
Any other questions for city manager?
Had a couple, in the cul-de-sac areas, there was a couple complaints about where solar lights are going, so.
Yeah, we're gonna work with the vendor when he comes back to see if we can adjust it, if we can. We don't wanna lose our sunlight power on these.
No.
We want it to work.
And Linda's one other thing, I think we talked briefly about speed limits in Bellevue Estates Island.
Yes, we're, I don't know if he's put the box down there or not, Captain Liner. Okay, because he told me he was gonna do it, but he didn't tell me when. We'll get that data back and get that to the council also, because we've got the box that we had on Gulf Boulevard at 6th Street. They did have a problem with the one they had at the other end of the city, so we'll probably rework that one, but we want to move to the areas that speed is a concern.
Even the contractors are complaining about a few people flying by them. So, I mean, we talked about possibly putting up stop signs or making each of the intersections three-way stop. Maybe that would help if we did it in one spot as a triangle.
That's easy to do if the council wants me to do that. You just have to tell me. I mean, I can get stop signs and put them up at an intersection if that's your pleasure. I mean, that's really up to you. As far as doing things like the speed bump and speed tables, I think we have to do that as a process.
There's been a lot of resistance on that speed
Yeah.
bumps, that's for sure. But maybe we should discuss this next workshop.
Yeah, we can do that. So, yeah, if you tell me you want me to put stop signs up somewhere, we can do that in a couple days.
It's probably easier than changing the speed limit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Lynn, can we get those reports in advance of the next council work session so that maybe we can get
I'll talk
some on this?
to
All of
Captain.
them, the Gulf Boulevard ones too. I mean, we got a lot out there, I know, so.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the persuasion, let's look at the data. I'm tired of anecdotal stuff. I mean, I respect it, and I've been on the other end too, but I'm just saying, let's do it scientifically and see what we really can do.
Yeah, I think whatever you do, it's got to be some type of process.
Citizen comments?
John Hansick, 103 22nd Street. I was gonna behave myself tonight, honestly, and not come up here until you started talking about speeding in Bellevue Island Estates. So, I'm gonna talk about it again and address it to the council and the city manager. The other day, one day last week, I saw one of the deputies in the Tahoe take one of those electronic Your Speed to Bellevue Island Estates. I went back there today trying to find where that thing was at. I couldn't find it. I don't know how long it's been there or whatever. I understand you folks that live out there have a problem. This isn't the first time I have come up here and mentioned the problem we have between Bayshore and Gulf Boulevard on 22nd Street. I have suggested on more than one occasion to the various deputies that are assigned, they need to sit down there at either Gulf and 22nd or Bayshore and 22nd and put that little zapper on that straightaway from Gulf to Bayshore and vice versa. We have a problem on our portion of 22nd Street with speeders from Bellevue Island. And I said before, we've had people who walk that street to the beach access by the Bel Air Beach Motel. And I'm afraid one day, and it's adults and there's families, something bad's gonna happen one day. So I'm going to request through the council that somebody direct the sheriff to periodically sit between Bayshore and 22nd Street and monitor the speeders on our 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Thank you.
Well, Lynn, can we ask the sheriff to maybe put one of those boxes next time? I know we can rotate them around as needed on 22nd.
Yeah.
I think we only have like a couple.
Well, we thought we had two, but the one didn't work too good. They had to borrow it, so there's really only one from this area, so it would have to be moved as need be. And we can do that. Usually they put it on a tree or something that's inconspicuous and go from there.
So we'll try to put it out there so we can record the data, because I agree, I told you before, I don't walk with my family on 22nd for that reason, to go to the beach. So I agree with you.
It's also an issue on Belle Isle, which is why the sidewalk question came up. That is a huge, in the morning, any time of the day, but especially in the morning when they're on their way to work, there's such a long stretch and it gives them plenty of speed, room to accelerate and typically going very quick. So that's why I think the sidewalks, comment came up. We own that land along there. I don't think it's something we should just close with, it's gonna cost $25,000. We haven't really gotten a good engineering, look at it and see, is this something that's viable or not? I'm not saying that we should hold up sodding. I think you need to get the irrigation and the sod installed, but just while we're speaking of speed, we need to keep the idea of sidewalks there, maybe along 22nd. They've got that landscape area, maybe that could be used for sidewalk space, There's some areas in the city that we already own the land, we could put sidewalks in and not encroach on, the easements on the front of people's front yards. So something we should really put forth in our plans.
Point to Mr. Hansick's concerns, and Lynn, perhaps this is something we will follow up together with Captain Reiner on our conversations. We said we're going to have one. Our top 10, it sounded like David Letterman, our top 10 traffic citation locations, number 1 is Gulf Boulevard and 22nd Street with 3 citations. So, and that's only 3. It sounds as if there's probably a lot room for a lot more. So, they're there. The sheriff is apparently there. It's our number 1 spot again this month. But maybe we need to even, put more resources there if it's this bad. I've heard you again, and we've heard it from other citizens too. So, council member, was it Jody? You won't even walk on the sidewalk, or Robin won't even walk on the sidewalk. That's just wrong, So we don't want that. So we'll work with the sheriff, but they're there right now. It's maybe not enough tickets being written, and maybe that's the issue, but we'll discuss that.
Mayor, could I ask you one last question? So, should we go ahead and put the irrigation in on Belle Isle and get the sod down?
You're asking me?
I'm asking the council.
I think you have to ask the council.
Well, that was the plan, but we kind of delayed it.
You've said it's a $25,000 expenditure, which is capital in nature, which has to go into capital budget, so it's something that can go for next year. Sod and irrigation has got to go in anyway, so it seems like you got to do that, but we'll take a consensus of council and comments.
I agree, it needs to be complete, the job needs to be
Finish it.
completed. And
Right.
so I think that we put the sidewalk plan on maybe a capital budget item. And at this point, I mean, grass is, I don't know, 50 cents a square foot, concrete's, probably more like $5 a square foot, so, yeah.
Okay.
Finish it up.
I just, because we've already got the irrigation materials, the staff's gonna do that, and then we're gonna hire somebody to throw the sod, because that's a lot of sod.
Yes.
Is there anyone opposed on council?
No, okay, that's all.
That's fine. Any other questions for the city manager? City clerk?
Nothing.
Thank you. Any unfinished business? We now go into city council comments. Last time we started on this side, so this time we're going to start on the other side. Councilwoman Swope.
Mr. Mayor, may I be excused? I've got a
Yes.
epidural procedure at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. I really need to get ready for
Does
that.
anybody have any issues? I have none with council leaving. No. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
I actually have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Councilwoman Shirley?
I think I've covered everything. I just had a comment. I know there was reviewing the minutes and there was a lot of conversation. We talked about traffic on Golf Boulevard. And I don't want to go down this rabbit trail, but just my observation has been this first crosswalk north of the light seems to back up a lot of traffic, both directions, when you're coming on the beach and off the beach. So I don't know if that's, a consideration of removing that landscape island and moving that crosswalk might be a good opportunity, Lynn, but that's something we maybe should talk about at a work session. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Councilman Gaddis?
As far as the traffic goes, on 22nd, I'm aware there is a problem there. For a quick fix, I think that we should issue a directive for Pinellas County to hang out on, right there, just right off of the four-way as you're entering the neighborhood. It would certainly catch a speeder beyond your house because they're not going to stop. They're going to do a rolling stop. Also on the way back, they do the same thing. I learned early on that they like to hang out there, and therefore I always am reminding myself, stop, look both ways. I think the more often we can have them there, probably the safer we'll be. Other than that, I would like to thank Patty and Melanie and Lynn for working so hard on putting our documentation back online and the cooperation of switching things over to something we can read. So, that's all I have.
Thank you for all your help on that, Dave. Councilman Dave?
The only thing I would say about our speeding issue is those nice white SUVs or the white cars with all the green letters on them stand up. And many years ago, when we had our own police department, the cars were black. And nobody knew where they were, or they was easily missed. But I think the best thing the sheriff could do is put an item there, either a camera or what we're doing, the speed sensor to find out just what it is, and maybe we should stick a camera up there if it's legal, to snapshot one or two people that do speed, because that's all it is.
I don't know if that they have a trailer that they were using across the bridge here. and they read plates backwards of it, so you go by it. But I don't know if that captures the speed from, the front to go by it. It's more, what I understood was if there was a plate that was not current, or it was a car that they had a warrant on somebody. So I'll ask Captain Liner that. It'll be later in the week because he's on vacation through Wednesday. So I'll ask
I'd like to
that.
meet, that's the one, we said we were gonna try and do a quarterly meeting, so
Yeah.
I'd like to, if we could, set that up maybe with a day, even if it's a conference call, however it's
Yeah.
easily done, I'd like to be in on that one with you.
I mean, the other thing, Lynn, getting down to that intersection, if you look north on Bay Shore, you go down to 23rd Street, most of the people, because of that center concrete piece and the pumping station being there, they creep up to that point. And they creep a little further because of those trees that are blocking the views. So if we could cut that back, maybe people wouldn't roll through it. But I can almost see them going east and rolling through that stop sign. It's just like on the corner of Belt Boulevard and Causeway. If you're trying to make a turn to go north, and you look south, you've got that big bush hanging out there, and you can't see the cars coming down or north on Belt Boulevard. Similar situation. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mackey?
No, everyone pretty much said it. I agree. I mean, I have seen the sheriffs at 22nd and Bay Shore, but I think they're just looking at the stop sign infractions, not speed. So maybe just more of a presence. I don't know, a sting operation, or just where you don't see the car, like a speed trap. I don't know. But it is still a concern. And every time I drive by your house, I make sure I go the speed limit so no ping pong start flying at me, because that would be scary. Just saying. Don't do a pink under there. But other than that, thank you, Lynn and Patty, for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gunn?
A couple issues. One is the protocol for this meeting. There seemed to be a lot of confusion tonight because previously the protocol was when you go through the approval of the agenda, it used to be you pulled things out of the consent agenda, moved it to the regular agenda. You didn't bounce back and forth. So in other words, you pull items off the consent agenda, put it into the regular agenda as a line item, go back to the consent agenda, wipe it out. It's off, it's done. Approve the consent, what's remaining of the consent agenda, go into the regular agenda, line item, line item, line item. And the process is well spelled out. You get a motion, there's a discussion, that sort of thing. So we may need to talk about that at the workshop or reconsider the protocol there. Perhaps at the next work session, we might consider, some of these meetings do get a little long, maybe factoring in a break in there, maybe a 10 or 15 minute break either between the agendas and the discussions, or a time limit or whatever. But perhaps at the next work session, discuss that and factor in a 10 or 15 minute break. And this gives us also an opportunity to talk to the citizens or whatever. Speeding, I understand the issue. Let the data do the talking for us. Let's get the data. 22nd, I mean, the first survey we did with the traffic in Ontonato, it blew me away how many vehicles use that. I mean, it's like 1,700 cars. I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, there's going to be that. I mean, that's statistics. But let's see what the data is. The sheriffs are doing a good job. I mean, I don't know how many people I've had come to me and say, what's going on? You know, it seems like there's a huge crack down in Bellevue Estates Island. So, we had a discussion with the city manager about traffic control and that sort of thing. Just have to be very cautious about jumping to solutions without discussing with law enforcement what alternatives do we have and that sort of thing. So, that's all I can. Who's working on that?
Thank you. My apologies, I thought today that we could jump back and forth on this consent agenda. There was quite a bit of stuff that had to get pulled off the consent agenda due to just the nature of the review. There was a lot of pieces need to be done. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to review. Normally I review this by Friday before. This time I didn't review it until today, so I didn't have a chance to even call Patty, but we'll see what we can do on that in the future. I will in the future clear the consent agenda first. I didn't like the way it worked either this way, so that'll be fixed. I see we have our reporter here. Wayne, please get this quote right, okay? I don't want this misquoted. There was a famous quote back in the 1980s, actually in the 1970s, in the New York Daily News headline, and it was Gerald Ford, "To New York, go to hell." I reached out to the city of Clearwater and talked about the traffic problem. They didn't tell me that, but it was pretty darn close to that. We got no response. In fact, what I got was an earful, basically we're the fault, we're the problem. This is right from Mayor Kretikos. I didn't appreciate it, he knows I didn't appreciate it. Now he wants to be my friend at the mayor's meetings, that's fine. Lynn and I will be meeting with the county this week to explore other options. I will tell you this, on Easter Sunday, I was the sacrificial lamb on this one fitting with the day. June and I decided to put ourselves in the middle of the traffic. We went right to Clearwater, right to their bridge, right into the middle of the traffic. They had their Sugar Sand Festival going. And I said, okay, let's find out where this traffic came from. This is at about 12:30, 1 o'clock. It was backed up on both bridges by here and there. The traffic, believe it or not, was here in Bel Air Beach. And I had spoken to one of our deputies and he told me it usually clears out around 16th, 17th Street. It was not backed up all the way downtown into Clearwater. It was not backed up to Pier 60. It wasn't backed up at all going to Clearwater. There was plenty of car lengths. This is one day. It's anecdotal evidence at best. But we will get more information. We will look at this, okay? I understand that sometimes it might be people trying to get into Sandkey Park. But the problem was nothing more than people making the right turn here on Causeway onto Gulf Boulevard and then slowly accelerating, and then as the cars spread out, the traffic spread out and the traffic was moving all the way into downtown Clearwater. I realize it's not always like that. That's one day. Anyone who wants to run those tests, please feel free to do so and let us know how it runs out. I think from here out, probably we will not have too bad a traffic jam because the major tourist stuff is done. Clearwater's not going to help us, okay? It's that simple. And basically they said, there's nothing you can do about it. I don't totally go with the idea that there's nothing we can do about it. We're going to keep working on it because I get constant complaints from our citizens about it. So next step is going to be seeing what we can do with the county, with the sheriff, and see what other options are available. I mean, there's stronger options. I've had people tell me, you know, go to war with them. I'm not willing to do that. I'm willing to observe all the possibilities in terms of trying to settle this thing with the county. I don't know if there's an easy solution. I didn't think there was. Just don't count on Clearwater to help us. Emergency planning. Lynn and I have been working on it. The CERT team is an emergency response team. We're going to be doing that. Every council member was given a copy of our emergency plan, and I would like to discuss that plan and review that plan. My initial observations is, and this was the same thing that I mentioned to Lynn, it looks very good in terms of the basic Category 1, Category 2 hurricanes. My concern was what happens if a big one hits, where it overwhelms our resources. And I don't know if it really addressed all of that stuff. I didn't get a chance to read through all of it. I'm going to, but by our next work session, I would like to discuss that a little bit further. We are coming up to that time of the year, so if there's anything we can do in terms of citizen committees, outreach, we talked about satellite phones, stuff like this is the time to do it. Generators, this kind of stuff. You don't buy a generator when the hurricane warnings go up. So if we want to do this stuff, we need to start talking about it. Budget is coming. We saw that out there. There's people we're not having a budget finance committee, but anyone who wants to work with me directly in reviewing anything on the budget, they're certainly welcome. I cannot do that with another council member, but I can do that with citizens. So any citizen who wants to speak with me regarding the budget, any concerns, any information, we will be looking at that in advance of the stuff that's going to be published. That starts this week for me. Finally, we were at two things. We were at several meetings with the Big C, the Mayor's Council, and the legislative update, I'll give you after the next, or probably at the work session. I have a meeting on the 14th, which is going to tell us what's passed and what hasn't passed. Suffice it to say, most of the real bad stuff didn't pass. However, some things did. So there are some issues where There's issues on what you can charge for fees in your community. There is stuff about where they can put 5G telephone poles and wires. So some bad stuff did pass. This is the time when we're going to start coming up with the game plan, and I promised I would do this, to start lobbying for the next agenda. This is when you start doing it, because the next one comes up, I believe, in November. So it's a short turnaround. Next time we will be represented in Bel Air Beach, and I'll be the person doing that representation. So it starts now. So anyone, again, who wants to get involved in this stuff, please pay attention. Their intent in Tallahassee on stripping our home rule, one of the things would have completely gutted our ability to regulate short-term rentals. So this stuff that we like to hold dear in our city, if we don't let our legislators know, it's going to get taken away from us. There's bigger interests and big lobbies at stake, and that's what's happening. The other and final item that I have is I'm on the Mayor's Council of Pinellas, and I have been, I volunteered to be the representative for the entire Mayor's Council on the Emergency Services Advisory Council. So I'll be representing that organization for the emergency services. Emergency services and emergency response is one of my priorities, if not my #1 priority. So I'm going to get involved with everything I can in terms of the county and also with this city. As I told Lynn, he is, no question, he's in charge of our city when there's an emergency, but I will be right behind him. And I expect that to be my situation. Anyone on council is welcome to join me, and any citizen is welcome to join us, because we can't do this no matter, and Lynn is quite good and his staff is quite good, but we can't do it with 4 people. We need more than that if we're going to make the city go. So I've been reaching out to individuals. We have a lot of talented people in the city, so please come forward if you have any abilities or any desire to be on that stuff. Other than that, I have nothing further, and if we have a motion to adjourn, I will entertain it.
So,
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We stand adjourned.